She was declared missing in action 10 years ago. Helmand Valley, 2015. No body, no trace, just silence. Then last week, a forward unit got ambushed, trapped in a canyon, radio jammed, no way out, until one shot rang out from 900 yards away and dropped the enemy leader instantly. Nobody saw the shooter, but one soldier whispered, "Only one person used to shoot like that." Her name was Sergeant Aria Lynn, 31 years old, special operations sniper with the 241st Recon Unit. They called her Ghostbell because her bullet was the last sound the enemy ever heard. Aria had skills that seemed almost supernatural. She could fire without revealing smoke, move without leaving tracks, disappear like a shadow in broad daylight. She only used hand-carved 308 rounds, each one marked with her personal signature. Her teammates described her as silent by nature, but deadly by choice. During training exercises, she would vanish into terrain that seemed impossible to hide in. Other snipers would spend hours trying to spot her position, only to feel a tap on their shoulder from behind. "How did you get there?" they'd ask. Aria would just smile and say, "The mountain told me where to go." She had this ritual before every mission. She'd sit alone, polishing each bullet by hand, carving tiny initials into the brass casing. ALGB, Aria Lynn, Ghostbell. Her spotter, Corporal Jake Morrison, once asked her why she did that. "Because she said, if this bullet saves someone's life, they should know who sent it." In 2015, during a rescue mission in Helmand Valley, her squad walked straight into an ambush. Intelligence had failed them. The enemy had been watching their movement patterns for weeks. They knew exactly where the Americans would be. The squad was pinned down in a dried riverbed, surrounded on three sides. No cover except for scattered rocks and debris. Aria took position on the ridge above and started picking them off one by one. Her shots were methodical, precise. Each bullet found its target at distances that should have been impossible. For 47 minutes, she held off an entire enemy platoon. Her rifle barrel was so hot it was smoking, but she never missed, not once. Her shots gave the entire squad cover to retreat to the extraction point. One by one, her teammates made it to safety. But during the final artillery barrage, she lost radio contact. Her last transmission was, "Package delivered. Get them home safe." When the team returned 48 hours later to find her, they found blood on the rocks, broken scope glass scattered in the dirt, drag marks from her rifle, but no body. The search continued for 6 days. They brought in dogs, thermal imaging, ground-penetrating radar. Nothing. She was officially declared MIA, missing in action. There was no funeral, no flag ceremony, just a small memorial plaque hung in the training center that read, "She covered all of us and disappeared with the wind." CTA Act 1. Comment, they never found her, but never forgot her. April 2025. Alpha Ridge Forward Operating Base. Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen was leading an 11-man patrol unit through routine reconnaissance in the northern mountains. Chen was a veteran, 15 years of service. He'd served alongside Aria Lynn back in the day. He knew her shooting style better than anyone still alive. The patrol was checking suspected weapons caches in a series of mountain caves. Intelligence suggested the enemy was storing ammunition and explosives in the area. Everything was going according to plan, until it wasn't. At 1400 hours, the patrol entered what appeared to be an empty valley. GPS coordinates were clean. Satellite imagery showed no enemy movement. But within minutes, they realized they'd been lured into a kill zone. The enemy had positioned themselves perfectly. 3 snipers on the high ground with clear sight lines. 1 forward observer with advanced optics calling out coordinates. 2 close combat specialists with automatic weapons blocking the only exit route. It was a textbook ambush, professionally executed. For 8 minutes, the patrol was trapped, taking heavy fire from multiple directions. Private Rodriguez caught shrapnel in his left leg and was bleeding heavily. Their medic, Doc Williams, was running low on supplies. Chen was on the radio calling for immediate extraction. "Base, this is Bravo 7. We are taking effective fire from multiple positions. Request immediate close air support." "Over," but the radio kept crackling with static. The enemy was using some kind of jamming equipment. Chen looked at his men. Young faces, scared eyes. Some of them had never been in a real firefight before. He was calculating their odds. When it happened, a single gunshot echoed across the valley, from somewhere impossibly far away. The enemy commander, a man with a distinctive red headband who'd been directing the ambush, dropped instantly. One clean headshot, right through the center of his rifle scope. The American soldiers looked at each other in complete shock. Nobody had eyes on a friendly sniper in that direction. Their support units were miles away. Chen felt his heart skip a beat. He'd seen that shot placement before. A 19-year-old private named Williams looked around frantically. "Where did that come from, Sergeant?" Before Chen could answer, 3 more shots rang out in rapid succession, spaced exactly 3.2 seconds apart. Chen's blood ran cold. He knew that firing rhythm. He'd heard it 1,000 times during training exercises. 4 targets eliminated, 4 perfect kills, each shot from a different angle, each one at a distance that should have been impossible. But here's the thing that made Chen's hands shake. There was no muzzle flash visible from any direction, no radio chatter from a friendly unit, no drone footage showing a sniper position. It was like the bullets materialized out of thin air. The remaining enemy fighters, the ones who weren't dead, started retreating, fast. They'd never seen shooting like that. Chen stood up slowly, his rifle still ready, and scanned the distant ridgelines through his binoculars. Nothing. Just empty mountain peaks and afternoon shadows. Private Williams was applying pressure to Rodriguez's leg wound. "Sergeant, who was that? Who's out there?" Chen lowered his binoculars. His voice was barely a whisper. "Ghostbell." She never left. "She's been watching us this whole time." The patrol was extracted 30 minutes later, but during the helicopter ride back to base, nobody talked. They were all thinking the same thing. Dead soldiers don't provide sniper support, but legends never miss. CTA Act 2. Comment, dead don't shoot, but legends never miss. Back at Alpha Ridge, the intelligence team immediately started analyzing the incident. Captain Sarah Martinez, the base intelligence officer, had seen a lot of unexplained events in her career. But this one was different. They pulled up satellite imagery from the time of the engagement, reviewed every frame of drone footage, calculated ballistic trajectories using advanced computer modeling. The mathematics were precise. The shots had come from exactly 899.8 yards away, from a position on the eastern ridge that should have been completely exposed. Martinez stared at her computer screen. She'd run the calculations 3 times. The angle was impossible. The distance was extreme. The accuracy was supernatural. "Pull up Aria Lynn's service record," she told her analyst. Sergeant First Class David Park looked confused. "Ma'am?" Aria Lynn was declared MIA, 10 years ago. "Just pull it up, Park." The file appeared on screen. Aria's qualification scores, her mission reports, her signature weapons and ammunition preferences. Park's eyes widened. "Ma'am." Her longest confirmed kill was 892 yards, using hand-carved 308 rounds. Martinez felt a chill run down her spine. "Dispatch a recovery team to those coordinates. Full gear. N Park, tell them to look for spent shell casings." 2 hours later, Master Sergeant Tom Bradley was leading a 4-man team up the eastern ridge. Bradley was old school, 23 years of service. He'd been Aria's shooting instructor back in the day. What they found at the calculated firing position changed everything. There was a prone firing position carved into the rocky ground. The stones had been carefully arranged to create a stable shooting platform, still warm from body heat. Next to it, one unused cartridge placed carefully on a flat rock. The brass was hand-polished, gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. And beside that, a spent shell casing with hand-carved markings clearly visible, a L-GB. Area Line Ghostbell. Bradley picked up the shell casing with trembling hands. He'd seen those markings before, hundreds of times during training exercises. "It's her," he said quietly into his radio. "No doubt, Ghostbell's alive." But that wasn't the end of it. The team continued searching the area. 50 meters downhill, they found something else. A small stone cairn. 3 rocks stacked carefully on top of each other. Beside it, scratched into the dirt with a stick. Still here, still watching. Bradley's hands were shaking as he photographed everything. This wasn't just evidence. This was a message. 3 days later, a small unmarked package arrived at the base commander's office. No return address, no delivery records. The postal clerk swore it had just appeared on his desk. Colonel James Harrison opened the package himself. Inside, a military ID card, cracked down the middle, held together with medical tape. It read, Sergeant Area Lynn, 241 Recon. And underneath the ID, a handwritten note on torn paper, was never gone. Just never done. Some promises don't have expiration dates. Harrison called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. They debated for hours about whether to report this up the chain of command, about whether to launch a full investigation, about whether to classify this as a security breach. Finally, Harrison made a decision. This stays in this room, he said firmly. Need to know basis only. If Aria Lynn is somehow still alive out there, and if she's still protecting our people, then we owe her our silence. But they did make one change. On the memorial wall in the training center, they replaced Aria's old plaque. The new one read, Still watching, still covering, still out there, always faithful. Word spread quietly through the ranks, not officially, never officially, but soldiers talk, stories get told. The younger soldiers didn't believe it at first. Ghost stories were just that, stories. But the veterans, they knew. They remembered Aria Lynn. They remembered Ghostbell. They started leaving small offerings at the memorial, energy bars, fresh batteries, clean rags for weapon maintenance, a small thermos of hot coffee that somehow disappeared overnight. Nobody ordered them to do it. It just happened. CTA Act 3. Comment, she didn't die. She disappeared until we needed her again. Nobody ever saw Aria Lynn again. Not clearly, not up close. But from that day forward, whenever there was trouble in the high country, there would be a shot from extreme distance. The soldiers started calling it the 900 Whisper. Always the same pattern. Always the same precision. Always when they needed it most. Always when conventional support was too far away or too slow to respond. A convoy gets ambushed on a mountain road, and the enemy's heavy weapons specialist drops from a single headshot. A forward observation post gets overrun, and the attacking force's commander falls before he can call in reinforcements. A medical evacuation helicopter gets targeted by shoulder-fired missiles, and the missile operator collapses before he can pull the trigger. One shot, one kill, 900 yards or more. No muzzle flash, no follow-up shots, no radio communication, just silence. Technical teams were dispatched to investigate these incidents. They found evidence every time. Spent shell casings, carefully constructed firing positions, signs of professional fieldcraft, but never any DNA evidence. No fingerprints, nothing traceable to any active service member. The scopes they found were always calibrated exactly to Aria's old specifications. The ammunition was always the same hand-carved 308 rounds she'd used 10 years earlier. It was like she had become part of the landscape itself, a guardian spirit of the mountains. Base commanders started including a strange instruction in their briefings for new recruits. If someone shoots to save your life, don't ask questions. Don't look for them. Just nod your head and keep moving. Some angels prefer to stay invisible. In the shooting range, they hung up an old photograph of Araya from 2012. She's looking down, adjusting her rifle scope. Sunlight reflecting off her dog tags. Behind her, perfect mountain silence. New snipers would stare at that photo for hours, trying to understand what made her so special. What separated her from every other marksman they'd ever met. The instructors would tell them, she didn't shoot to kill. She shot to protect. That's the difference between a sniper and a guardian angel. Most people shoot because they have to. Aria shot because someone else needed to live. Some soldiers reported seeing a figure on distant ridges during dangerous missions, always too far away to identify clearly. always gone when they looked through binoculars or rifle scopes. But the veterans knew. Ghostbell was still out there, still watching, still ready. She didn't want recognition, didn't want medals or ceremonies or parades. She just wanted her people to come home safe. And they did. CTA Act 4. Comment: she didn't want praise, she wanted them safe. Not all heroes wave goodbye. Some just disappear into the silence until their shot is needed again. Aria Lynn didn't wait for permission. She didn't need her name on a wall. She didn't need a parade or a medal ceremony or a speech from the commanding general. She just needed to know that her last bullet would still mean something, that somewhere out there, her brothers and sisters in arms would make it home to their families, and they did, 10 years later. In a canyon far from home, when her people needed her most, Ghostbell answered the call. Some legends die with their last breath. Their stories end when their hearts stop beating. Others become eternal. They become the whisper in the wind that warns you of danger, the shadow on the ridge that watches over you, the perfect shot that comes from nowhere, when everywhere else has failed. Aria Lynn chose her legacy. She chose to be remembered not for how she died, but for how she lived. Not for the battles she won, but for the lives she saved. In a world full of people fighting for glory, she fought for something better. She fought for love, and love never really dies. It just changes form. Sometimes, it becomes a bullet fired from 900 yards away by a ghost who never really left. Final CTA, comment: one shot. 10 years later, if this story stayed with you,